Now, the JSE has seen a flurry of listings this year, many of them cemented in the property space. Donna Oosthuyse, Director for Capital Markets Division at the JSE, joins us now for more. Donna, it's lovely to have you. I was just recalling that the last time we spoke to you, it was at the launch of CNBC taking up their space at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So it's really lovely to have you back. Let's talk about the major trends that we've seen in the listings, the sectors that we've seen coming, if there have been delistings, which sectors seem to be porous in that particular sense, and any insights in terms of previous years and what we've seen in 2014.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be back. Indeed, we have seen a flurry of listings this year. We've had 22 listings on the JSE. This is the highest number of listings that we've had since 2008. In fact, it's the first year since 2008 that we've topped 20 listings for the year. You're quite right, there have been some themes. We've had 8 listings in the property sector. We've had a good mix of listings between our main board. We've had 16 listings on our main board, and we've had 6 listings on our Altex board. We've had a good mix between South African companies listing and offshore companies listing in the country as well. So we've had 16 South African companies list and 6 companies list from other markets. And I think some of that is based on the flexibility that we introduced in our listing requirements in 2013. We did anticipate some of the trends we've seen. In 2013, we allowed real estate investment trusts in South Africa. We introduced that concept, and we did see a lot of conversion in the real estate sector to real estate investment trusts, or REITs as they're called. We also introduced what's called special purpose acquisition companies, or SPACs as they're known. And these are companies where a company will come and list and will raise cash, but it has 2 years to invest that cash. And we've had one cross-listing. Sakoven moved in from AIM from the UK, and they raised capital here to make acquisitions in the South African market. It's of great interest to private equity companies. And of course, last but certainly not least, is the fast-track listing process that we introduced just in September, which allows companies a fast-track, much more efficient and faster process to list on the JSE if they've had at least 18 months listing in one of 4 other markets. And we had our first fast-track listing also in property that listed on our Altex board. So we're very pleased with the activity that we've seen.
Donna, let's talk about that activity. Sorry to interrupt you. It's Lindsay in Cape Town. 1999-2000, there was a flurry of listings on the JSE, all to do with IT, of course. And then what happened? The market crashed. 2008, you said, was the last time you had a lot of activity as well, just prior to the crash. And now you've got 22 listings in 2014. Is that going to be prior to the crash, do you think? Or, no, that's not a question for you. Tell us how you get those listings. Do you go out there with the team and say, this is a company that should be on the JSE because of the amount of turnover you do, or is it a case of people coming to you?
It's a little bit of both, Lindsay. We have, we're very fortunate in South Africa that the JSE has a very compelling market to work in. The size of the liquidity pool in our country is very significant. We have non-bank financial institutions with assets of over 8 trillion rand. That's almost twice the size of the assets of the bank, of the banking sector rather. We also have the top-rated regulatory environment in the world. The World Economic Forum has rated the JSE the world's best regulated exchange out of 144 countries. We're also rated 3rd in terms of raising capital. So I think that balance between having a very well-regulated market and having a market where you have ease of capital raising really works well in our favor. So certainly having those elements, we do promote ourselves. I must say one of the things that I've done since I joined the JSE was to put together a primary markets team within capital markets, and their role is to work not just with companies that we anticipate could list, but also with the entire ecosystem around the investment community. So we work with investment banks and sponsors, helping them and getting ideas from them on what we can be doing to make us a better environment.
Hi, Donna. This year we saw like a huge IPO with Alibaba in the US. Of course, a Chinese company going to the US. Better capital markets, etc. Might be the argument there. What is the JSE doing to actually attract similar kind of listings for African countries? I mean, we probably, without argument, have the best financial markets in most of sub-Saharan Africa, and there's obviously better ability to raise capital in South Africa than you find in most African countries. What's the ability of the JSE to make inroads into those markets in the African continent?
Well, you're absolutely right in terms of the attractiveness of our market for them. And interestingly, I just returned from Nigeria, where I was there doing exactly what you're saying, advocating the JSE as a listing environment for companies there. And we actually had a very interesting engagement, not just with the Nigerian Stock Exchange, but also with members of their investment community. I met with the Debt Issuers Association, with several institutional investors, some of the big banks. And the opportunity that we all see is that we do cross listings into each other's markets. So the other exchanges recognize the depth of our liquidity and the infrastructure that we have, and they're supportive of having their companies cross list. I think they still have a place of pride that they want a main listing on their own board, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a secondary listing on our market. And that's what we're trying to encourage, and not just listing of individual companies. We believe there's also a good opportunity in the passive instrument space around exchange traded funds. And so we're working also with those markets where we can, where they would appoint an index provider, and we can work with our exchange traded product issuers to issue some exchange traded products on our exchange. So it's a very good question, but we feel the way to go is to collaborate with the other exchanges and bring those products onto our market and put our products on their market. And the issuers and investors at the end, who are our real clients, should in fact benefit from that.
It certainly sounds that we're at least one step closer to realizing the dream of integrated financial markets on the African continent. A very big thank you to Donna Oosthuyse, Director for the Capital Markets Division at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.